For 1,000 cycles, the Krell Empire's grand strategy was built on a few simple, unassailable truths. The first, power dictates reality. The second, fear is the most efficient tool for control. And the third, our most elegant and terrible truth, was Project Chimera. You might know it by its more common designation, Xyloxis. It was the crown jewel of our Imperial War College, a perfect weapon, a jungle death world so meticulously curated and lethally designed that it could break an entire civilization without our fleets ever firing a shot. We didn't need to conquer worlds. We'd simply introduce their atmosphere to Xyloxis's airborne spores and wait. The process was brutally, beautifully effective. We'd seeded the planet with the galaxy's most horrifying creatures. Razorvine that could sense vibrations and snap shut with the force of Durasteel. Gargantuan six-limbed Grolks, armored behemoths that were apex predators on a dozen different worlds, now all competing in one frenzied ecosystem. We had neurotoxic fogs that induced madness before liquefying organs, and swarms of flesh-boring insects that could strip a creature to the bone in minutes. It was a masterpiece, our ultimate deterrent, a monument to our own relentless logic. Then we made a fatal error. During a routine skirmish with some dissidents on the outer rim, we shot down a civilian transport. A small, insignificant vessel, barely a blip on our tactical displays. It was a human ship. We'd classified their species as Class 7, non-competitive, harmless, primitive. They had no energy shields, no real fleet, just a bizarre and frankly irrational persistence. We logged the incident as a minor inconvenience. One survivor's life pod made it to the surface of Xyloxis. From our orbital observation post, the Panopticon, we registered its landing. The directive was simple: observe and record the subject's swift demise. We gave him 17 standard hours. We were wrong. We hadn't introduced a victim to our weapon. We just introduced the planet to its one true apex predator.
The Krell Empire doesn't make mistakes. We just encounter unforeseen variables. This human was one such variable. Through our drones, we watched the escape pod's hatch hiss open. The subject, a male, stumbled out into the cloying, sulfur-tinged humidity. He was wearing simple, torn fabric. Useless. He had no weapons. His biometrics, beamed from the pod's emergency systems, showed a spike in heart rate, adrenaline, and cortisol. A standard fear response. Everything was going according to plan. We later learned his name was Alex. To us, he was just Subject 734. His first test came within minutes. A clutch of skitter shades, hand-sized arachnids with a powerful paralytic venom, dropped from the canopy. We'd seen these things disable a charging grokbeast, so we expected the human to be paralyzed, then turned into a living incubator for their eggs. Our chief xenobiologist, Dr. Vorn, noted on his datapad, subject will expire via envenomation, time to system failure, 4 minutes. But the human did something illogical. He didn't scream. He didn't freeze. He moved. With a sudden explosive motion, he slapped one out of the air, crushed another against the tree, and stomped a third into the jungle floor. The rest scattered, their hive mind sensing a threat it just couldn't compute. Alex clutched his arm where one had tagged him, his face twisted in pain. The venom was in his system. We waited for the paralysis to set in. It never came. His body convulsed, his temperature spiked to a level that would kill any Krell, and then it stabilized. His immune system, a chaotic mess of over-engineered evolutionary traits, was fighting back. It wasn't just resisting the toxin, it was analyzing it, breaking it down, and neutralizing it. An hour later, he was weak, but he was alive, and he was learning. Dr. Vorn deleted his first report, his mandibles clicking in confusion. Subject exhibits anomalous resistance to neurotoxins, he noted, re-evaluating. For the first 3 days, Alex was purely reactive. He fled from stalkers, raptor-like pack hunters. He learned to recognize the sweet scent of the corpse bloom, a carnivorous plant that lures you into its digestive maw. He spent his nights huddled in a hollowed-out tree, hungry, shivering, and surrounded by a world that wanted him dead. But on the 4th day, something changed. We didn't see him running anymore. We saw him watching. He spent hours on a high rock studying the stalker pack's hunting patterns, noting their paths, their calls, how the alpha directed the others. This wasn't the behavior of prey. This was the behavior of a rival. Next, he needed water. The streams on Xyloxis are a deadly cocktail of acids and microbes. His survival pack's filter was smashed. We figured he'd be dead from thirst in another day. Instead, he watched the local wildlife, noticing small furry creatures drinking from the cup-like leaves of a specific plant. He climbed one, a 50-meter ascent that should have drained him completely, and found a small reservoir of filtered rainwater. He didn't just drink it, though. He took a piece of salvaged metal from his pod and made a crude lens. He evaporated a drop of the water, looked at the residue left behind, and even tasted a tiny amount before spitting it out. Was he testing it? It was a crude, primitive form of chemical analysis, but it was undeniably science. Dr. Vorn's reports to High Command started sounding different. Subject 734 is demonstrating problem-solving skills beyond the expected parameters. It does not rely on instinct. It employs observation, hypothesis, and testing. This level of adaptability was not in our projections. Our projections were about to become completely obsolete.
30 days. For 30 days, Subject 734, Alex, had simply refused to die. On the Panopticon, our morbid death watch had turned into the most compelling biological study in the Empire's history. Alex was no longer just surviving, he was a resident. He'd set up a defensible base in a cave behind a waterfall, which masked his scent and gave him a source of safe water. He'd lost the gaunt look of a victim. The high-gravity world was making his muscles denser. He moved with a purpose that told us he was no longer a visitor. His next project? Fire. The constant dampness of Xyloxis made that seem impossible, but he scavenged the power cells from his pod, and for days he experimented trying to generate a spark. He failed, over and over. Any Krell would have given up, but humans, we were starting to realize, have a relationship with failure that is completely alien to us. They don't see it as an endpoint, they see it as a data point. And then he did it. Using frayed wiring and a pile of dried fungus, he created fire. For the first time, a controlled artificial light pushed back the darkness on Xyloxis. The drone footage of his face in that moment showed more than relief. It was triumph. He had just imported his world's physics into ours. Fire changed everything. It kept the nocturnal hunters away. It let him cook strange mushrooms, unlocking more nutrition. Most importantly, it let him make tools. He found a deposit of obsidian-like rock. Using the heat from the fire and the cold from the waterfall, he fractured the stone, creating razor-sharp edges. He was napping, a skill buried so deep in his species' ancestral memory, it was like watching a ghost from their own primitive past. He fashioned a spear with a fire-hardened tip. He made knives. The observers on the Panopticon were silent. We were watching a single organism reenact 10,000 years of its technological evolution in a matter of weeks. He is not just using the environment, Dr. Vorn dictated, his voice a low whisper. He is altering it, imposing his will on it. This is a Level 3 intelligence indicator. Our classification of this species is catastrophically wrong. The real turning point came on day 47. That was the day Alex got tired of scavenging. That was the day he went hunting. His target, a stalker. He didn't just charge in, he used his mind.
He spent 2 days building a trap. He dug a deep pit along a hunting path he'd observed, covering it with a lattice of vines and leaves. On the other side, he left a lure, the carcass of a small animal. Then he waited. The drone saw it all. A lone stalker, drawn by the scent of blood, rushed the bait. At the last second, it sensed something was wrong, but it was too late. The ground gave way and the creature plunged into the pit with an audible snap. It was trapped and enraged, but not dead. Alex appeared at the edge, spear in hand. The stalker snarled, scrabbling at the walls. Alex was calm. He didn't throw the spear. He thrust it downward with his entire body weight, striking the stalker at the base of the skull and severing its spinal cord. He had just killed a mid-tier predator with a rock and a pointy stick. News of this sent the first real shockwave through the Krell High Command. A single unarmed primitive was now actively preying on the inhabitants of our ultimate weapon. It was illogical. It was impossible. We watched him butcher the creature with his stone knives. He ate its meat. He cured its hide using the animal's own brain, a technique so ancient we had to check our archives just to understand what he was doing. He started wearing its skin like armor. He was no longer just living on Xyloxis, he was consuming it, becoming it. The psychological shift was obvious. He wasn't hiding anymore. He started exploring, mapping the terrain, learning the territories of the great beasts. He even learned to use the planet's flora as a weapon, tipping darts with a sap that caused intense pain. The jungle, once his prison, was now his arsenal. And we, the Watchers, were beginning to feel a cold, unfamiliar emotion creep into our logical minds, an emotion we had inspired in 100 other species, but never, ever felt ourselves. It was fear.
Day 68. This was the day our delusion finally shattered. The undisputed king of Xyloxis was the Krell, a 10-ton monster of muscle and armored plates that we had engineered to be unbeatable, a living siege engine. We had records of a single Krell wiping out an entire platoon of our own shock troopers. On Xyloxis, there were 3. They answered to nothing, and one of them found Alex's territory. Our sensors picked up the roar first, a sound that made the air itself vibrate. We saw Alex freeze. Then, from the jungle, emerged the Krell. It dwarfed the trees. Its massive head sniffed the air, and its tiny, hateful eyes locked onto the cave behind the waterfall. It smelled the fire, the cooked meat, the human. It smelled an intruder. Every tactical model gave Alex 2 options: flee and be killed, or hide and be killed. Fighting a Krell was not just suicide, it was a statistical absurdity. Alex didn't run. He didn't hide. He picked up his spear. In the panopticon, we were transfixed. This was it. The experiment was about to reach its bloody conclusion. The Krell charged. The ground shook. It was the embodiment of brute force. Alex stood his ground. Then, at the last possible second, he sidestepped with the calculated grace of a matador. The Krell, unable to stop, smashed into the rock face next to the cave. In that instant, Alex moved. He didn't attack the armor on its back. He ran up its massive tail, a feat of agility that should have been impossible on this high-gravity world, and slashed at the softer tissue of its ankle joint, a minor wound, a harassment. The Krell roared in fury, turning to swipe at him, but Alex was already gone, retreating. The beast charged again, and again Alex dodged, leading it on a deadly dance, using its own momentum against it. He was a gnat it just couldn't swat. For over an hour this continued. Alex was bleeding and bruised, but the Krell was also tiring, its rage making it sloppy. It was a persistence hunt, a strategy his species perfected on their own deathworld, a strategy of simply outlasting everything. Then Alex saw his chance. He'd been luring the Krell towards a section of cliff riddled with deep fissures. He goaded it into one last furious charge. This time, instead of dodging, he braced himself and thrust his spear not at the creature, but into a fissure in the cliff above. The spear acted as a lever,
A massive, precarious spire of rock, already weakened, shuddered and gave way. Tons of rock crashed down onto the Grall's head and neck. It was a brutal, messy geological event. The creature was crushed. Silence, broken only by Alex's ragged breaths. The drone zoomed in on his face. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't fear. It was a look of absolute primal dominance. He had just killed the god of this world. A horrified quiet filled the panopticon. Dr. Vorn slowly sat down, his appendages trembling. Send the report to High Command. Code Omega. The weapon is compromised. The ecosystem has a new apex, and it is not one of ours. The Omega protocol was our highest alert. The response was immediate. Sterilize the threat. We dispatched a hunter-killer team. 5 of our finest commandos in chameleon stealth armor, armed with plasma rifles. They were the best of the best. Their mission, land, hunt the anomaly, and erase it. They landed in darkness, silent ghosts. They expected to find a primitive cowering in a cave. They found the cave empty. They didn't know that Alex had seen their ship's landing fire in the sky. He, the hunter, knew he was now being hunted, and the jungle was on his side. The first commando died silently, stepping into a concealed pit lined with sharpened stakes. The second was taken by the environment itself. Alex created a distraction, luring the soldier into a grove of razor vine that crushed him inside his own armor. The team leader, Vorlag, realized their mistake. They weren't the hunters here. He ordered his remaining 2 soldiers to form a defensive perimeter. But Alex had spent weeks studying the swarming patterns of the flesh-boring insects. He found a nest, agitated it with a torch, and drove the furious swarm right at them. Their plasma rifles were useless against 1,000,000 tiny targets. Only Vorlag was left. Panicked, his discipline shattered, he ran, firing wildly into the dark. He never saw the vine Alex had tied across the path. He tripped, and as he looked up, a shadow dropped from the canopy. Alex, clad in the hide of a stalker and the armor of a Grall, holding a club made from the Grall's own femur bone. The most advanced soldier in the Krell Empire was killed by a creature wielding a bone. We saw it all. We watched our ultimate hunters get dismantled by a single human using sticks, rocks, and the very weapon we had created.
Conclusion. The mission was a catastrophic failure. The Omega Protocol was a failure. Panopticon Station was no longer an observation post. It was our prison. We couldn't leave orbit, terrified he might somehow find a way to follow. And we could never, ever land on Xyloxis again. The planet was lost. It was no longer our weapon. It was a monument to our arrogance. It was his. The final report from Dr. Vorn is now legendary. It is the epitaph for an entire era of Krell dominance. Subject 734, Alex, has seized control of Project Chimera. He hasn't survived the deathworld, he has conquered it. He hasn't adapted to the ecosystem, he has become it. We thought we were seeding a planet with monsters. We were wrong. We were just tending the garden until the gardener arrived. Do not attempt to reclaim Xyloxis. We made the mistake of classifying the human as prey. The galaxy must now learn to classify him as something else, a force of nature. Our weapon is now his, and we, in our infinite wisdom, have given him the deadliest training ground in the known universe. If you enjoyed this story about humanity's terrifying potential, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the edge of the galaxy. We love exploring stories where humanity is underestimated, but never, ever outmatched. Now for our question of the day. If you were Alex, what one skill or piece of knowledge from Earth do you think would be the most useful on a planet like Xyloxis? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. Thanks for watching.